Thank you to the officers for arranging this event. Welcome to all members of the Cabinet, and welcome to all the officers who will be presenting items and responding to Cabinet members' questions. Also, thank you very much to all the viewers who have logged in with us today, and for all those who are coming to the Cabinet to ask questions and bringing those questions forward to Cabinet. I'm just going to hand over to Craig Rogerson, who is from Democratic Services, just to run through the arrangements for the meeting before he hands back to me to take us through the agenda. Over to you, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Craig Rogerson, Democratic Services Officer for this meeting, and I'm assisted by Paul Robinson, who is the host of the virtual meeting. This meeting is a public meeting held in accordance with the regulations which permit meetings to be held by remote means. The meeting will be live streamed for the public to view via our Public Eye platform, and Sheffield Live TV may also broadcast the meeting. There'll be a recording of the meeting, and that will be available to view later through the Council's website. Public questions can be asked and petitions can be presented at Cabinet meetings, and details on how to do this are available on our web pages and included in the agenda papers. For this meeting, we have 8 questions that have been received from 2 members of the public. At the appropriate time, the meeting host will bring speakers into the virtual meeting room to enable them to ask their questions. Once the public speaker has asked their questions, the host will then return them to the virtual public gallery. Before I hand back to the chair, just a couple of housekeeping points. To make the meeting run as smoothly as possible, can I ask that everybody in the virtual meeting room puts your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. When you want to speak, please physically raise your hand to the screen and the chair will then bring you in and you can unmute yourself to speak. If at any time any member loses the ability to hear or be heard, please let the chair or the host know as quickly as possible. And then finally, just for members of the public, you might see members looking away from their screens at times. This is because they need to look at an additional screen or device containing their agenda papers. I'll now hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. I'm now going to ask Cabinet members to introduce themselves. So I will take it in the order that I see on the screen. Councillor Mark Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Mark Jones. I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment, Street Scene and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Abtisam Mohammed.
Councillor Abtisam Mohammed, Cabinet Member for Education and Skills.
Thank you, Abtisam. Councillor Terry Fox.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Terry Fox. I'm Deputy Leader. I'm also a Cabinet Member for Finance, Resources and Governance.
Thank you, Terry. Councillor Mazhar Iqbal.
Thank you, Chair. Mazhar Iqbal, Cabinet Member for Business and Investment.
Thank you, Maz. Councillor Mary Lee.
Hi, Councillor Mary Lee. I'm Cabinet Member for Culture, Parks and Leisure.
Thank you, Mary. Councillor Bob Johnson.
Hi, Councillor Bob Johnson, Cabinet Member for Transport and Development.
Thank you, Bob. Councillor Paul Wood.
I'm Councillor Paul Wood. I'm a Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods and Community Safety.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Jackie Drayton.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Jackie Drayton. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Families.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor George Linders Hammond.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor George Linders Hammond. I'm the Cabinet Member for Health and Social Care.
Right, that's all Cabinet. I do have to say that people keep moving around on the screen. So that's just a note for officers. So if I can't find you, just give me a wave. Right, thank you very much. We do have officers with us today. I'm not going to ask them all to introduce themselves right now, but I will, of course, ask them to introduce themselves when they present the items on the agenda to the cabinet members. Right, that's the first main item of introductions. Item 2, apologies for absence. Do we? I don't believe we do.
No, Chair.
Right, thank you. Also at this point, we will be I'm proposing that we bring item 14 up the agenda to be taken after item 4. This is because we have invited guests from the Sheffield City Trust for that particular item, and they will be joining us within the meeting to contribute to that to the discussion of that item. So at that point, we'll be bringing them in and they will introduce themselves. It's out of courtesy when we have invited guests that we don't expect them to sit through a couple of hours of normal business for council, and we do try to get them introduced as soon as we can at the start. So we will be doing that at that point. Item 3 is exclusions, where we have any items where we require the public and the press to be excluded. And as it happens, there are 3 items today, which is 12, 13 and 14, where in the appendices, we will require the public and the press to be excluded, but only if cabinet members wish to refer to the appendices or raise any questions on the appendices. So when we come to that item, if members indicate that they wish to do that, then I'm afraid the public and press will be asked to leave at that point. Because there's 3 items, they will be asked to leave at that point, and then we'll bring them back in for the next item. So I believe, Craig, they are the only 3 items. Yes, is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. So item 4, are there any declarations of interest before we move on to item 14, in particular, the main items of the business?
I need to declare an interest, Chair. Councillor Mazaric-Bell, I'm a member on the Sheffield City Trust Board. So if I could declare an interest, but I don't have a pecuniary interest, so I will be participating in the discussion and decision, Chair. If I could just highlight something, Paul usually mentions this because I'm looking at the screen, but I'm also looking at the agenda on my phone. So I think a number of us are going to be using a number of screens, but that's usually mentioned at the beginning before we start.
It was, sorry. Craig mentioned it in his, arrangements for.
Apologies.
No, you probably were looking at your screen at that time to find the agendas, because I'm flipping all over the place. So, but thank you for that reminding mostly the audience, Mazza, because it is, we do flip from one device to the other, and sometimes actually my device flips off to save battery, so I'm having to switch the battery back on, so that there may be a slight delay as well, so it's worth pointing that out too. So thank you for that. And then just finally, before we go on to item
Chair,
4.
sorry, it's not really a conflict of interest as I'm a gym member, but I'd like to just put on public record that I use SIV facilities, and just to make sure that doesn't conflict to me participating in any of the conversations.
Absolutely not, because so am I, and I'm assuming most people are, but thank you for that. as I say, before we just start on item 14, I do also just want to say to the two questioners that have come today, you know, I do apologise that we are taking this item first, but it is necessary, so bear with us and we'll get straight on to public questions as soon as we can. So item 14, which is the provision of grant funding for Sheffield City Trust to reopen Ponds Forge. I think we have, can we bring in at this point, Craig, our invited guests as trustees of the trust?
Certainly, Chair, I'll do that. Just looking at the attendees, I've got two that are both named Andrew Snelling. I suspect one of them might be Alex Pettifer, because we were expecting Alex, so I'm going to bring both of those in as we speak, plus the other attendees.
Whilst we're doing that, I'll just mention I've had apologies from one of the other trustees, Graham Moore, who I think most people know is also the chair of Westfield Health and is moved more and actively involved in Sheffield Life. And Graham sent his apologies because unfortunately Graham had a fall on the last day of his holiday. He's recovering well, still in a bit of pain, but is unable to be with us today. So we just want to send all our best to Graham. And if he's not viewing, then I'm sure the trustees will do that for us, and I have done that on email. Right, they're all now with us. So what I will do is I will ask you to introduce yourselves right now, and then I believe it's Tammy that's going to do the introduction to the report. And then when Tammy's introduced the report, I will ask the chair, David Gray, to say a few words, and then we'll move into questions from the cabinet. And if any of the members of the trustees wish to contribute, then please just indicate and I will bring you in at that point. You're fully participating in this discussion and you're very welcome to do so. So David, would you like to introduce yourself and then go through your trustees? Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. My name is David Gray. My day job is I'm chairman of the OSL group of companies, manufacturing group of companies based in Sheffield. I'm chairman of Sheffield City Trust and have been for the last 3 years. I'm looking down the screen as to, Patrick, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Patrick Abel. My day job is I'm a corporate finance partner at Hartshaw, firm of accountants, 25 years corporate finance experience on M&A activity around the world. I'm a trustee on Sheffield City Trust and Seven Hills Trust, and I've been I've been a trustee for same time as you, David, about 3.5 years, I think it is.
Thank you. Lynn?
Hi there, I'm Lynn Clark. I've been a trustee for a few years now. I try hard to remember, at least 6. I'm probably into my 7th year. Background is HR and I provide support to the organisation on HR matters, and I've worked with the senior management team.
Thank you. Alex?
Alex Pettifer. I'm Deputy Chairman of Sheffield City Trust, formerly Director of Estates at Sheffield Hallam University. I know quite a few of you already, I think. I'm formerly the Chairman of St Luke's Hospice. I've been involved with the Trust for a number of years, was responsible for building the ICE Centre and for the refurbishment of the City Hall, along with numerous other estates projects in the city.
Thank you. Peter?
Hello, I'm Peter Taylor. I'm an emeritus professor at Sheffield Hallam University, where I was Professor of Sport Economics in the Sport Industry Research Centre. And I've been on the trust for about 7 or 8 years.
Thank you. Rick?
Yes, Rick Blues. I'm a trustee of Sheffield City Trust. I joined the board 8 years ago when I retired. I'm an accountant by profession and spent the whole of my working life in professional practice in the city. And as well as City Trust, I'm a trustee of a number of Sheffield-based charities.
Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, David. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrew Snelling. I'm the Chief Executive of Sheffield City Trust.
I think that's all the trustees that were available for this afternoon. Julie, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great turnout, actually. I wasn't expecting as many of you, but you are very, very, very welcome. And I thank you for taking the time out to come along. Right, so Tammy, if you would like to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Julie. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Tammy Barris. I'm the Head of Partnerships within the City Council. So as Julie said, the reports regarding the provision of funding to the City Trust to enable them to open Ponds Forge. This follows a previous decision that was taken in August to reopen all the facilities across the city. Following further consultation and consideration, we're now recommending that we open Ponds Forge and provide funding of up to 1.6 million to allow that to happen. It's expected that if this funding is granted, the venue will reopen during October, although a detailed timeline is being drawn up by Andrew and his colleagues at the moment to look at exactly when, which parts of the building will reopen. I think it's important to say the 1.6 million cost within the report assumes that the venue remains open and that there's no further lockdown in place. Obviously, none of us at this moment in time have got a crystal ball, and we continue to monitor regularly with our internal finance teams and with Andrew and his senior officers where we're at on that. But I think it's just important to flag that within the report. Clearly, if Ponds Forge reopens, it will require the City Trust to review their ongoing redundancy proposals, and further detailed work will be needed around that, because obviously if Ponds Forge reopens, some of the staff that were subject to redundancy will be required to work within that venue. I don't have a specific number at the moment. That's something that Andrew and his HR colleagues are working through in terms of reopening proposals. I think the only other thing to say is that the funding for 2021 will be subject to further detailed discussions between the council and the trust, and will form part of the council's budget setting process for next year. And there will be further reports around leisure and entertainment coming to cabinet prior to Christmas this year. So the recommendation within the report is to provide up to 1.6 million funding to the City Trust this year to enable Ponds Forge to reopen. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Tammy. I know that every cabinet member's read the report, and we've had several discussions about this over the last couple of weeks, especially. David, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I would. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting us to the cabinet meeting this afternoon. We've had a board meeting today at the City Trust to look at all of the issues that are arising from these decisions. I'd just like to put a bit of background around this, if I may, and that is that the trust was first pulled together in 1991 and has always been subject to public funding from the council and public support for the council. In those days, it was to the tune of £6 or £7 million, and that continued for some considerable, for really all of its life. In fact, there hasn't been a year where the council has not supported the trust. It's understood that providing the kind of provision that we do requires public funding. Now, there's been a lot of conversations in the press about bailouts, and the council has put some serious money into trust this year, but it is simply because of COVID, and that is outside of anybody else's control. You will understand that the majority of the revenue that supports the work that the trust does comes from the entertainment side of our business, and that's been closed with zero revenue since March. I would like to say, just put on record that the trust has worked really closely with the council, has an excellent working relationship with both Lorraine Manley and her team and Eugene Walker and his team. There's been some really difficult decisions being made. We're living in very, very strange times and very uncertain times where decisions that are made one month get changed the next month. It's particularly difficult for us to maneuver our way through this unprecedented crisis. But we have a strategy for going forward. We need to continue to work together. And from here, rather than just look at this particular year, what is quite exciting is that we're working together on the next generation of projects to bring forward facilities for the next 20 years for Sheffield. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, David. There was just one point where I sort of thought when you said that it changes from month to month, and I'm thinking, well, actually, it changes from day to day, doesn't it? Sometimes, and especially when you're getting very mixed messages like "don't go to work," "oh, go to work," "oh, don't go to work," "don't socialise," "oh, go out and eat as much as you can," "oh, now don't socialise." So it's very confusing times, and I think the fact that the lack of recognition by government that how local people and local authorities and local institutions have to deal with this, there does appear to be a sort of a real lack of understanding of the impact that some of these confusing messages and changes in messages by the day is really difficult. However, we always do it the Sheffield way, and we always work together. And I thank you for saying that we have got this excellent working relationship and will continue to have that. Before we move on to questions from Cabinet, can I just ask Eugene to just make a comment about funding, because I do think it's really important to say at this point about, because there has been some grand announcements by government of funding for leisure facilities around the country, and just to explain what that was and why we're not able to access it where other councils have been.
Yeah, will do. Eugene Walker, Executive Director of Resources. So as part of the government support for local authorities, which if members will recall from previous reports, we've got around 40 odd million grant towards our costs, but there's still not enough to cover the actual impact of COVID. As David was saying, there's a significant impact on our budget this year, of which the support for CIV is a significant element. But the difference is we, along with I think around 60 other councils, the government's provided one of the grants it's provided to local authorities is a grant to support losses of income, and that's not just leisure income, but leisure is the biggest part of the things like planning fees. The government's basically providing a grant scheme where it's paying around 75 pence in the pound for every pound of lost income. And it is doing that in most cases for leisure services. The difficulty we have is that the rules that the government have come up with mean that any council with outsourced arrangements or arrangements in trusts, and as I said, I think there are around 60 councils of various political colour, they're excluded from that because it's not direct income. But obviously the impact on our budget is exactly the same because of the subsidy we provide to SCT and CIV. So obviously we've raised that with government as a number of other councils, and I think we've had various lobbying around that, because that would make a significant difference to the impact in our budget and the impact that the loss of revenue in leisure facilities is having on both SCT and our budget. Hope that covers it, Julie.
It does, Eugene. Thank you very much. I think it was worth saying that. I also just want to point out something else around the difference between leisure facilities and international training and events facilities. And we know we've got some of the best international training and events facilities in the country in Sheffield. And there seems to be a lack of acknowledgement from government that it isn't just about leisure, it really is about training the next Olympians and Paralympians, not just in water sports and diving, but also in the English Institute of Sport, etc., and around some of the other facilities. So it's also worth pointing out. Can I ask Cabinet if anyone has any questions or comments to make? Mazza?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I missed the board, David, this morning. I had a medical appointment. I understand Lorraine passed on my apologies. So hopefully I'll make a board meeting. Secondly, Chair, I listened to the scrutiny board meeting, and in a sense, I'd like to apologise for some the behaviour of some of the politicians on that board. I think some of the comments were definitely unfair. So my apologies there. But I think that the decision that we've taken together is the right decision. As the leader, the chair's outlined, it's not just for the elite athletes, the Paralympics or the Olympians, but it's also opening it up for everybody. And folks that I've spoken to welcome the decision of opening up Ponds Forge. It also adds the footfall to the city centre. We hear every day the challenges, the tough challenges that businesses are facing. City centres and town centres are being hit hard. I was there Monday having a walk round. So again, the reopening of Ponds Forge helps with the economy. So that's great news. And I welcome the joint piece of work, the vision work that we've set out, the journey that we'll take together to bring in some outstanding world-class facilities that we've had here now and will continue in the future. I am disappointed, Chair, by the government. It was interesting to hear the Welsh government yesterday announce a package to support all leisure facilities, regardless of ownership. I welcome that news. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our MPs, Clive Betts especially, because he's been leading the charge on holding this government to account, asking for these additional resources, not just for Ponds Forge, but for all the facilities that you manage. And, you know, we're speaking about Ponds Forge today, but also in the report, it mentions the Healy Baths. Again, having these community facilities open on the back of some of the issues that have come at the forefront of COVID-19. We know health and well-being is high on the agenda. So it's great news, Chair. So I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Maz. Jackie?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all the members of the board that have come today and taken time to come here. I suppose I just want to echo everything that Councillor Iqbal's had, but with my cabinet hat on as somebody who has responsibility for public health and also for all age disabilities, I know how important all the work of the trust and all the work and in all the venues is to not just, as the leader has said, our elite sports people, but our communities, our school children, our those people out there with disabilities who come and use facilities, and also it's part of their healing process and part of the things they're doing to get back after operations or particular illnesses. I think the work that the trust is doing is massive. It does a lot of things, and of course echo everything. We are going through very, very difficult times, as David has said. not sure, as well as things changing daily, not sure, I'm sure Greg would say, and he has said, Greg Fell, our Director of Public Health, this is likely to go on for 18 months, for a longer, you know, we're going to the new normal, whatever the new normal is. And so it's great to hear that the Trust are working with the council to come up with plans that maintain the facilities and the services to the people of Sheffield in the best way we possibly can, as well as supporting them through. I do think that the point that the entertainment, you know, it's the entertainment side as well, and often in an organisation like this, one area sustains other areas, and we team and ladle that money that comes in. It's really important. And I suppose I want a city, we all do, don't we, where we don't just look after the vulnerable, but we do have the sports, the leisure, the arts, the culture, and everything, that we have people who can go out and get involved and be involved in that. So I'm really, really, really pleased that we've managed to do this, and I will be wholeheartedly supporting the recommendation. I'd like to take the opportunity, Chair, if it's okay with you, to thank the board of the City Trust and Civ, and all those people who are in all the venues and all the facilities across the city, for keeping those facilities as much as they can going open, and for trying to continue the work in very, very creative ways. And I know, for instance, you've done a lot on apprenticeships. I know young people have had apprenticeships there. I know young people have had work experience in the past there. And the way you've supported those people going forward, those young people going forward in their journey to work, as well as their journey to health and fitness. So thank you all very much. It really is much appreciated, and look forward to working with you in the future too, and keep this partnership that, quite rightly, David has said, started in 1991. I remember I came onto the council in 1996, and I remember it was just new, and I've seen the journey as we've gone on, and I think we need to keep that journey going. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jackie. Mark?
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for the presentation from the board, and thanks for the clarification from Eugene as to some of the financial implications we've got. As someone who's utilised my local facility many times already since it's been reopened, I'd like to take this opportunity to go on record and say that I really appreciate the professionalism of all the staff at the leisure centres. They're working under incredibly difficult times, and they've made us feel really, really welcome, including getting swimming lessons open for my youngest. So all the efforts that you're going to, and the engagement you're giving to people at the moment is outstanding, and I'd like to thank everyone working at the leisure centres for that. And I'd also like to reflect on some of the things that my colleagues have said. It's not just an economic driver. From sitting on exercise bikes or whatever, you kind of get a bit bored, but you're listening to conversations. There's groups of people interacting in there in a socially distanced and responsible manner who go to the leisure centre regularly. That's their circle of friends, that's their support networks, that's where they go out and meet people, and that's how they benefit their mental health as well as their physical health. So the actual impact and of opening our leisure centres is quite profound for the city. It's not just the measure of money we're having to invest in this, but it's also an element that we'll be saving money, because we'll be keeping people well and keeping people out and about, and making sure that people don't suffer under these unprecedented periods. So I fully welcome this report, and thank you, City Trust and all the workers of SIV for the efforts they're going to.
Thank you, Mark. That's why we deem the services that are provided by the Trust as public service, as well as services of choice by our population. It really is a public service, which requires public support. Bob?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, most of the points I'd agree wholeheartedly with colleagues, and I'd just like to thank David and the team for the presentation. I'd just like to join with them in welcoming in the moves that you've made to reopen the facility as quickly and safely as you have done, and also to welcome petitioners who've shown us what Pondsforge really means to the people of Sheffield as well. So thank you, David, and thank you to any petitioners that might be listening.
Thank you, Mary. I have Mary, and that's, oh, I've got Mary and then Terry. Mary.
Okay, well, a lot has been said, Julie, but I just want to sort of say it's good to see David and Andrew here today. I know they couldn't be at the scrutiny board because they were both on holiday and they had very short notice, so it was impossible for them to be there. And I know on the day there was lots of technical glitches with our our IT system, and people were having trustees were having difficulty accessing the meeting. So glad it's all gone smoothly today. I just want to mention what David said about our long partnership. I think that's really, really important. It's been a very long partnership. And I think over the last 10 years, a very difficult time for both of us because of austerity. And I think the fact that we've worked very, very closely together and had to make some very, very difficult decisions together and work through the consequences of those decisions together is really important and should be mentioned. I think the relationship is strong. It's come out of that and it's strong, and I hope it will continue to be like that. So there was a lot of difficulties that austerity brought for us. I think today, you know, the reopening of Pondsforge is the right thing to do. I think lots of people have mentioned why it's the right thing to do, so I'm coming last now probably, and a lot of it has been mentioned. But I think if you look at, we've got the elite swimmers down there from the aqua clubs, but they bring with them a lot of up and coming young people. They may not all get to go to the Olympics, but they all add to the sporting life of the city, and I think listening to them has been very important. But it wasn't just them, it was other people across the community, some involved in, some members at Pondsforge, some not members but interested in Pondsforge and interested in and hoping we would be able to open it. So it's across the city that we've been able to listen to people. I think as well as opening Pondsforge, I think it certainly made, we did say, you know, this is about opening up the city as well. I think it's important that we did open. I know things have maybe changed a little bit over the last few days now, but I think opening up the city has been important. And Pondsforge is an iconic building, and it's important that it was for that reason that we opened that up. But also, as Mazza says, it's increased capacity. Now Healypool can offer community sessions to people, not just for schools. Our disability groups who use Pondsforge can now take up where they left off and continue to use Pondsforge, even with the current restrictions that have just come in recently. We know the health benefits of all our facilities are absolutely vital to the city, more so now than ever because of COVID. And we know, you know, that we've got some serious risk factors. We've all known about inequalities in the city, and health inequalities in particular. But if it's really important now that we make use and encourage and do everything we can to enable people to use the facilities and to use other services that the trust put on. We know they do a lot of work in the community, and I'm sure over the coming months we'll be asking them to do more work in the community and make your use of our open air facilities. And I know they'll work with us in a very flexible way. So and just also to mention, you were talking about government funding. We have lobbied government, we are lobbying government, and it's very unfair that we're in this situation. It's no fault of the council's, no fault of SCT, it is just because of the unfair nature of the government funding. We are lobbying them. As Mazza said, Clive Betts is doing a lot of work as well on our behalf, as are the other MPs, but in particular Clive. I'm just glad to see that we've been able to open Pondsforge and we've got the other facilities open. And I look forward to maybe paying a visit in October when you're up and running again. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Terry.
Thanks, Chair. I was also at the scrutiny board, and obviously it was unfortunate timing that a few representatives couldn't get there from SCT. But whilst at the scrutiny board, obviously a lot of scrutiny members had a kind of plethora of questions, and I think the main thrust of those questions was about how we challenged those costs between us, that this wasn't just a kind of use of money that wasn't being challenged across the board. And I think what would be prudent here, whilst we know on regular meetings that we're continually challenging everything, I think it'd be good to hear from SCT representatives just to, without treading into commercial, just how we are robust and challenging these figures on a regular basis. And I think it's a real opportunity to get that message out there to a wider audience while we've got that, to take that. And you know, I just think that across the piece that from the scrutiny board, I think a few members who probably might be listening in would welcome that opportunity from David and the board to just put their points of view over on that, and on behalf of certainly the people who use the facilities at this moment in time, and obviously my grandkids are taking swimming. I'd just like to thank you all for the work that you're doing. But it would be good to hear on a wider audience about the challenging of costs, etc. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. David's indicated they would wish to respond to that. David.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Julie. First of all, thank you for the apology that was kindly given by Maz and Jackie. And I have to say that when I saw the scrutiny board, when I returned from abroad, I was disappointed by some of the comments. And I think it's perhaps because this is a very complex business, and it may be difficult to understand and get your head around the whole aspect of it. If you think how many venues that we're operating in different areas, I can understand that. So my first offer is that as chairman of this, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of our trustees and our executive, is that we're very happy to meet with any members of the council and brief them and go through it. But I would say that since its inception, the council have had the right and have always exercised the right to have observers on the board. And the council get all of our management accounts. They get our annual accounts. They're incredibly complicated, the annual accounts, but you get them. You get our minutes of the meeting, and you, as a council, are involved in the decision making as we go through it. Now, I introduced a number of our board, and you can see from the 4 of the 9 trustees that there are highly competent and professional people. And I'm really lucky as chairman of this. I sit as chairman of a number of boards in Sheffield, and I've got some really top class trustees to lean upon. But notwithstanding that, I'm perfectly happy to meet and brief anybody. And then perhaps, you know, that will help in the decision making going forward, because, you know, this is an area which will require further hard decisions to be made. And I think it's an area where the city has excelled in providing facilities of a world-class nature for the last 30 years. They're coming to the end of their economic life, and the council has already been, as I spoke earlier, working together with us and some consultants to come up with the next phase of facilities that the city of our size need and deserve. But to give you some sort of notion, this is a £30 million business, and against the background of increasing competition, we increased our turnover by another million last year.
but it's a sizable business, and it's very asset based, and those assets are getting older every year. So in respect of Terry's question, which I suspect is, how did this large sum of money arrive so quickly? It's quite simple. We have £30 million a year, which is, somewhere around about £2.7 million of turnover a month, 2.6, 2.7 million each month. And the turnover has collapsed because we're unable to open up our big money spinners, which is the arena and City Hall. They've been closed since March. In respect of the other facilities, we've frozen all of our members, and looking around the board, Mark and Jackie and a number of you are members, you will know that we froze the direct debits for all of our members, and that's absolutely the right thing to do. Why would we want to charge them when we can't provide them with a facility? As we've been opening these facilities, we've taken on very large costs because we believe, and I'm sure you believe, that the health of people who come into our buildings is of paramount importance. And so we've poured a lot of money into making sure they're absolutely safe. And I guess I'd like to reference an exit poll, if you like. I know exit polls are very popular with politicians, so just like to reference our own exit polls. We've asked 2,500 so far of people who are now returning to our facilities, 2,500, what they thought. And in overall safety, 88% of our customers felt very safe or safe in our venues. Only 3% of them felt unsafe. In cleanliness, 91% of our customers scored our venues as excellent or good. The check-in at venue, 89% of our customers scored their experience as excellent or good. In terms of COVID guidelines, 86% of our customers scored our safety measures as excellent or good. And likelihood of returning, 93% of our customers scored it as very likely or likely. So in essence, we have all of the costs and a third of the revenue. And, the council has made the right decision. You can't walk away from this because providing facilities, as was being explained a couple of times, providing facilities for the citizens of Sheffield is of paramount importance, and people's health and well-being, although it's costing money at the moment, if you stopped it, it would cost this city an awful lot more money in future times. So I think you're making the right decision. I think that if you need more information, I am more than happy to meet with any of you or all of you, and I will take you through the detail. Your executive are on top of this. They get all the information. Maz joined our board today. Neil Gibson has been your board member for the last 3 years. And as I say, your executive and your colleagues are an intrinsic part of our board and part of our board information and our decision-making process. And I would reiterate, despite what has been said in the press, I have an excellent professional board behind me. And I would remind you, and I'm sure I don't need to remind your colleagues, that we do this job and we do it without being paid. We're not remunerated, we're not expensed. We do this because we are Sheffielders who believe in giving something back to the city. And like many trusts in this city, we do it unpaid. And personally, in the last 6 months, I've spent more of my time working on this problem with SCT than I have in OSL Group, where I'm chairman of that, my own private companies. And that is exactly the same for all trustees across this city. So come and talk to us if you want information. We believe we're doing a is working cooperatively with both the executive and the politicians of the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, David. And I think you can see from comments from the cabinet members that your time that you put in personally, but also all the other trustees, is very much appreciated and valued.
And
I think hope you get that impression.
Yes.
I just want to ask one quick question and then make a comment. The quick question is around the recent announcement, and I don't know if Tammy or particularly Greg, I know Greg's around, of the limited numbers that can carry out indoor sport, limiting it to 6, and if that might have any impact on the facilities.
Actually, I don't know if Greg wants to respond to this, but Andrew Snelling did a report this morning to board in respect of that might be helpful, Julie.
Okay. Well, I don't know if Andrew will be able to sum it up briefly.
I will sum it up very briefly. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, the simple answer is that Sport England has confirmed that indoor sports facilities are not affected by the change.
Okay.
So we can continue to have more than 6 people in gyms or in team sports.
Good. That's great to hear. Thank you very much for that. I think that's a reassurance to everyone out there that's listening. And I'm sure that information will get out further. Right. Okay. Thank you for that. The only other thing then I do wish to add, because it happened to be a leader's decision, although we all know in this current climate that the leader makes decisions especially following consultation with all of the cabinet, many other members, in fact, and certainly with the director of public health. I don't think there's any decision I've taken in the last 6 months that hasn't involved the chief exec and the director of public health in particular. It all seems to be have to apply sort of like COVID approach to everything, every single thing that we do. But I just want to say something about one of about the initial decision. Of course, £15 million is an awful lot of money, as we all know, and we all know the dire financial circumstances that all councils are finding themselves in to varying degrees. But we do know that it will have a major impact, COVID implications on our finances as a council going forward, and to continue to provide the services people expect in Sheffield and they actually need and desire. But one of the reasons why we initially thought that we could manage without the opening of Ponds Forge is because we looked at the geographic spread of all the facilities around the city, and we believed that we'd actually covered the catchment of all citizens in Sheffield in order for them to be able to access a local facility, because at that time we were being encouraged to not to travel as too far unless it was absolutely necessary. And if you could use your local facility, like walking up the road or down the road, then that was more advisable. We also know the cost associated with Ponds Forge, as we've seen. It's been broadcast publicly, and it is an awful lot of money that in these current times that we know that there's a lot of suffering out there for people because of COVID, and particularly because of employment circumstances. So that was one of the reasons. One of the other reasons was we also know that Ponds Forge does need some refurbishment, and we felt it would also have been an opportunity that whilst it was closed, we could have started out looking at refurbishment during that period and saved that money. In the meantime, as it's proved, there's been an awful lot of feedback from various sources, justifiable feedback, particularly from the sporting clubs that use those facilities, and for many people, as we talked about, that have used Ponds Forge for a very long time to a very short time for health and well-being purposes, exercise and leisure, in fact. I think one of the main added sort of additional factors that have come into play as well since that decision is that since that decision, apart from the fact that Mary said and others have said that we have been lobbying government, I don't know how many letters I've signed to government particularly about this matter, but many other matters associated with the financing of the council. But we have been in negotiations in Sheffield City region, and everyone will remember that we signed the Sheffield City region devolution deal only several weeks ago, which means Sheffield City region's now got access to £30 million a year gain share for the next 30 years. And we all know that in the old scheme of things, 30 million doesn't sound a lot of money when we were having to make cuts of 80 million in 1 year during austerity. But it was meant for economic development so for every pound you invested of that gain share into economic development, you would get an economic return at least of that investment, the amount of investment. However, in Sheffield City region, because of COVID, we've been having serious discussions around economic development, economic growth, all well and good and brilliant, and that's what we all want. But at this moment in time, economic recovery and the circumstances people are finding themselves in because of COVID is really quite critical right now. So in Sheffield City region, we've been having these discussions about using some of the first year of gain share, the 30 million, to allocate directly to local authorities to support them and help them with economic recovery. That's what it's meant to be. We will be making a final decision at the next MCA, Mayoral Combined Authority, but there will be some of that gain share funding forthcoming for the local authority for economic recovery. We know that's coming. Not all of it will go towards this particular purpose, but we do know it is for economic recovery, and we do fundamentally believe that the opening of Ponds Forge will be part of that economic recovery, as well as all the other factors and reasons that we've talked about today. So that's another factor. So I'm very pleased that we've got the report today that allows us to consider reopening Ponds Forge sooner than we anticipated, because there was always an intention to open it as soon as possible. So I very much look forward, as everyone else does, to visiting Ponds Forge, and I very much look forward to all our sporting clubs and groups and individuals and households getting the benefit from that wonderful and fantastic facility that we can see that the city values very much. So thank you to everyone for coming along, and especially, as I say, the trustees for your time. And I would now like to ask the Cabinet if there's any final questions, or we will move on to taking the recommendations and move to the vote. Great, okay. So the recommendations are that we approve the additional funding of up to 1.6 million for the remainder of 2021, funded from reserves at this moment in time. The payment to Sheffield City Trust by way of a grant or loan of that additional sum up to 1.6 million to enable the reopening of Ponds Forge. The council entering into revised security arrangements with the trust and SAVE, and then further consideration of the opening of Ponds Forge and other venues to be dealt with as part to future reports to Cabinet on the leisure and entertainment strategy and the medium-term financial plan, which I think is coming to Cabinet shortly. So I think that's to say that we'll be continuing throughout this COVID period monitoring, and we'll also be looking forward to the leisure and entertainment strategy coming forward that the Trust are actively and positively participating in. It is about all of us working together on that matter. So can we take those recommendations, please? Are we all in favour?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed. Right, great. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to the Trust. I hope it's been worth your while. And we look forward to continuing conversations with you and meeting with you as I do often. So thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Thanks very much for holding us the time.
And take care.
Yeah, and you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Right, whilst the Trust members are leaving, I will now go on to back to the agenda, which is item 5, which is the minutes of the last 4 meetings, in fact. Obviously, due to the COVID response and the impact that that's had on staff and the workload, etc. There are 4 sets of minutes: 18th of March, 20th of May, 17th of June and 15th of July. Can I ask Cabinet if there are any inaccuracies on those minutes? Otherwise, can we agree those minutes as an accurate record?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Right, item 6, public questions and petitions. I understand we have no petitions and we have 2 questioners. So I'm going to ask Nigel Slack if he would like to be invited into the meeting to raise his questions.
He's on his way in, Chair.
I can see he's on his way in, and hopefully he will be with us in a minute. And Mike's ready and waiting. I assume he's not managed to stick with us. Thank you. I'm sure they found it interesting as well, the conversation. I'm sure Nigel did.
Oh, yes.
Welcome, Nigel. It's good to see you looking well. I hope you are well.
Yes, keeping well. Thank you. Hope you all are as well.
Yeah, just about. So thank you. Would you like to ask your questions, Nigel?
I will. I'll ask them all together because the first one's quite long, but I will, because I've pre-prepared people, I will rattle through it as quickly as possible.
Okay.
I will also be looking away, but in this case, it's for a piece of paper rather than another screen. Question 1. The first stage of consultation for the local plan is now underway. This is good. We are years behind where we should be, but if we get it right, we will be stronger for it. It's just a shame about the abuse that developers have handed to this city in the meantime. Over time, changes to national planning laws have broken the ability of local planning committees to actually deliver democratic decisions on behalf of our residents. Even headline decisions like Althorpe Fields are not safe. An appeal is already underway with central government, where developers usually win. This was even used as an outright threat by the University of Sheffield when there was even the least suggestion they may not be allowed to demolish the Grade 2 listed Jessop's Hospital. On that occasion, Sheffield City Council caved. New government legislation is now looking to streamline the destruction of our system of local planning with ever more presumptive acceptance of planning applications. Offices transformed into some of the darkest, tiniest flats in Europe without permissions needed, and deregulated market forces trash our cities, towns and countryside. Money and profit is king, and the planning system seems to support this wasteful and antisocial approach. Local architects, whose motto should be destroy history, demolish the good and sod the people, are now proposing new back-to-back housing for the city centre, less than 100 years since the slums of the city were cleared for decent, affordable council housing. At the same time, the economic impact of first COVID and then a disastrous Brexit will dictate a change from business as usual, and this council must drive that change. So what will the new local plan be able to do to protect our city from the depredations of government and predatory developers? Question 2. With more of the city's reserves being earmarked to support Ponds Forge, John Lewis, etc., when will those reserves be exhausted, and how long after that will the city be bankrupt? And question 3, what can this council do to utilise the government's approach of limited and specific unlawfulness to mitigate the issues in question 2? Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. I know you submitted the questions. I'm just scanning through them. That's what I'm doing. Councillor Johnson, Bob, would you like to respond to question 1 and then over to Terry for the last?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Nigel, and thanks for giving me advance warning of your quite lengthy question. And yet again, it's going to be quite a lengthy response, so I will ensure that you get that in writing as well as delivering it today. So like you, we have concerns about many aspects of the government's proposals in the planning white paper and how it will affect our local plan, the development and the development management process. We welcome some of the proposals, for example, the shorter planning time, simpler process for preparing plans and greater use of digital plans, and a stronger emphasis on design and quality, which I'm sure we'd all share. There is, however, a lack of detail in many of the government's proposals, which seems to be a common thread amongst many of their proposals of late. So it's a current unclear as what some of these actual plans actually mean in reality. Under the government's proposals, local plans will have a strong say over where development takes place, but the shift to a zonal system in plans with fast track or automatic permission for certain categories of development specified in the local plan has significant risks attached to it and removes democratic accountability and scrutiny from the planning application stage. It seems clear from the proposals, however, that areas defined in the local plan as protected areas, which include green belt, conservation areas and wildlife sites, would still be subject to more stringent development controls and should still see full planning applications to be required for schemes affecting those type of areas. So we will be keeping a close eye on that. The council's local plan is currently a Reg 18 document, is at consultation stage, which means that the council should be able to adapt to any emerging changes resulting from this legislation, while still maintaining the direction of plan and of course maintaining and promoting what you and I both know is special about Sheffield. And I'd be quite happy to meet with you and chat this through, Nigel, if you want to make an appointment at some time.
Please.
For a social distance coffee, if you're up to that. But thank you for your question, Nigel.
Thank you. Terry, next two.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Nigel, for the questions. On the first part of that question, we will be bringing the medium-term financial analysis to Cabinet shortly, hoping to be in October. And that analysis will give us full details on our forecasted reserves position. So we'll be able to have that in a more public document. On your last question, I could use that to many ends, but needless to say that we have not got a money tree. We have to set a balanced budget at the end of the year. We, as elected members, would then, if we didn't, we would have to take the hit, and therefore we would be replaced by an individual from government. And we believe that elected members are the right place and the accountable people to set that balanced budget. I could go wider on that, Nigel, as you probably know, but I'll hold it at that, and just to say thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Nigel. I'm sure that you will continue to observe.
Yes, thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Right, Mike Hodgson. We've met Mike before, haven't we? He's been a few times to Cabinet.
And again, Chair is on his way in.
Mm-hmm. I think Mike submitted his questions, so I'll dig them out. They're for Mary, so I think Mary's...
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mike. Yes. Would you like to go ahead?
Okay, I will, yes. I'm sorry, I did submit these a week in advance, assuming that they would then be passed on to...
They are, Mike, they have been, if you want to read them out or not. And
okay, all right. Well, I mean, I'm happy to read them out. Yeah.
Okay.
So, question one then is, could the Cabinet Lead for Leisure and Culture confirm that any proposals for disposals, whether by lease or by sale, of parks and countryside estate should be subjected to the Building Better Parks policy, which was approved by the Cabinet in November 2018. Question 2, could she also confirm that according to the decision-making process on that policy laid out in Appendix 1, this entails, first of all, a prior assessment of any proposal for such disposal against the reinvestment assessment criteria as detailed in Appendix 2. And B, that such an assessment should be followed by a consultation with key stakeholders, including local councillors, friends groups, and the wider community. That's also detailed in Appendix 1. And C, that these should take place prior to any discussions with other council departments, including planning, and prior to any authority to progress such a proposal by the Cabinet member. So these are questions about procedure. Question 3, in relation to the proposal by True North Brewery, referred to henceforth as TNB for short, to lease a section of Millhouses Park, which was lodged with Parks and Countryside in November 2019, can she confirm that this proposal did not undergo the assessment prescribed above as a first step, and that the consultation prescribed as a second step did not take place before she gave her authorization to progress this proposal in February of this year? This is in the light of the published assessment bearing the date of the 28th of August this year, which is well after the authority to progress was given, and with internal evidence in that assessment that it was prepared after the lodging of a planning application by TNB, which took place in May 2020, and also in the light of the failure of Parks and Countryside officers to carry out the required consultation with the key stakeholders. That's question 3. Question 4, would she then agree with Carton and Millhouses Community Group and the Friends of Millhouses Park that it would be appropriate for her to withdraw the authority to progress this TNB proposal, so that the proposal can be subjected properly to the required steps in that Building Better Parks policy? And question 5, would she also agree with Carton and Millhouses Community Group and the Friends of Millhouses Park that it would be appropriate to any indications given by Parks and Countryside officers that this proposal is being favourably considered and that it would be approved if the planning application is successful, that those indications should also be withdrawn because they prejudge the outcome of any consultation? And I would refer in particular to council policies that require the need for an open mind at the beginning of a consultation and a readiness to modify proposals according to the feedback received. In particular, to the Sheffield Council Involvement Table from 2016, which lays out in detail different levels of participation expected, and that refers specifically to disposals as one situation where these would be needed. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Mary?
Okay, Mike, I will get a written response as well because your questions, of your 5 questions, quite complicated. So we'll get a written response to you. But if we take it one question at a time. So question 1, yes, any proposal for disposal in our parks or sales are subject to the Better Parks policy and the criteria that's laid out there. And can I just say, a disposal refers to a lease. It doesn't mean selling land. It just refers to a lease on the land for a development. Question 2, all proposals are assessed against the criteria in the Better Parks policy. Proposals are subject to consultation with key stakeholders, which includes users of the park, the community, and as well as the friends groups and your Millhouses friends groups in particular, and the Carton group. There's no set order for the consultation and engagement process in the Better Parks for Better Parks proposals, and we also during that process need to take advice from other services in the council, and that might be property services, planning services, legal services, to enable us to make an informed decision as to whether the proposal is feasible. Question 3. I just say, as a cabinet member, I don't give a formal authorisation for proposals such as this. Officers recommend that a proposal be considered, and that includes the consultation and any planning application. And the proposal, this proposal in particular, came in initially in 2017. And I just want to add on to that is because of this proposal that the Better Parks policy was developed. So it came in 2017. There was engagement with the Millhouses Friends Group and the Cartano and Millhouses Community Group during that time. We've supported this proposal because we think it benefits the park and the community, and it fits with the Better Park policy, which is about betterment of the parks and enhancements of parks and benefits to the community. It was against assessors, as I said, against the criteria in May 2019. And we then aimed at further consultation. And this was planned to take place during the pre-app part of the planning process. However, as you know, national lockdown came in March, and the submission of a full planning application also came in, and that sort of overrode that overrid the timetable that we'd planned at that point. We have the need to so we had the need to approach the consultation in a different way, and one of the ways we have done that is to do that in via social media, and I think we've had more than 500 responses to that on that social media consultation. Planning applications are obviously subject to consultation in themselves, and again, because of the lockdown, that couldn't take place. And at the request of your group, the Friends of Millhouses Park, to the planning department to extend the planning application, the consultation process, before any determination was agreed. That has now taken place. We planning decided they would delay the determination date, and it was extended. And as I said, we've done a lot of work on social media in terms of the consultation and engagement with people in the community. There is more planning, more consultation planned, and that will be, I think, hopefully in October of the next month. That will take place with the community, as I said, and the other groups that have other stakeholder groups. I don't think it's appropriate for me to halt the consultation in the progress of this proposal. As I stated earlier, I don't give authority. Officers come to me and say that this proposal is recommended, and then the process then continues. Consultation has to take place, and as I said, more is planned. And also, I'd just like to add, during this pandemic, parks have been the best thing that have been there. The only thing sometimes that people have been able to enjoy, certainly in the first month or two of lockdown, and they were widely used. When we were able to open up further, one of the things we did is allow businesses in parks, the cafes and so on, to extend their seating areas to outside their premises in order to help their businesses. And that was something that went on across the city as well. And this proposal is really about that. It's extending what's already there outside of the particular premises where that business takes place. Question 5. The recommendation by parks to pursue the proposal would be part of, and that would be part of the planning process consultation. We would be part of that consultation by the planning process. If this the planning process is successful, we'd expect that a lease of a 10-year lease would be granted. Consultation, as I say, is part of the process. Parks are interested in these proposals due to the benefits that this would bring to Millhouses Park and the community there, and the wider, and obviously in the city as well. And as I said, we do plan more consultation next month, and on the basis of that further consultation, that will shape the proposals further before, and that will be, and we will do that in consultation with people in the local community and the users of the park, and True North as well, and we'll shape their proposal accordingly. I will get this a detailed response sent to you, Mike. I think you've had some of this information before, but I will ensure you get, as I say, a written response as well.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mike, for coming along, and I'm sure those conversations will continue offline and going forward. So thank you very much for joining us, both Nigel and Mike, today. Right, item 7 of the agenda is any items called in for scrutiny, Craig?
None to report, Chair.
Thank you. And then item 8, retirement of staff, where when I get my report up, we can see that we have about a dozen members of our staff that have given over 20 years service. In fact, there's one on there that's given
50 years
service. So I think that something happens when you give 50 years service. I don't know. I'm sure it's not a gold watch anymore, but I think we should certainly be sending something special to Keith Gardner, who was given 50 years service to Sheffield City Council. But also we have many people on there, 47, 35, 24 years, etc. So can we send all our best wishes, place on record our appreciation of their services, extend them to them directly, and wish them a long and happy future retirement, and direct that an appropriate extract of the resolution made under the common seal of the council is sent over to them. So can we agree those?
Agreed.
Agreed.
It's incredible.
Yep. Thank you. Item 9, month for capital approvals.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
We can, Damien. Over to you.
I'm Damien Watkinson. I'm the finance manager for the capital construction team, just presenting the capital schemes that have come forward for approval this month. I presume members have had a chance to see the report, but I'd just say that in summary, in green and open spaces, we've got feasibility works planned for park improvements at Ecclesfield and Richmond parks. Under housing growth, there's £18 million committed to developing new council housing at Newsteads, which includes the ground remediation works. Under housing investment, there's work being done on looking at fire suppression systems in older persons' independent living accommodation, and there's also a saving being declared on the demolition of outhouses stock. Under the people portfolio, there's feasibility work being done around Heritage and Holgate special schools to try and identify additional space for some children with complex needs. And under the Heart of the City 2 project, there's some reprofiling of budgets being done now that we have appointed contractors around blocks B and C around the infrastructure works and the public realm works, and also on block H around Lears Yard. I know that's been quite brief. I know you've got a lot to get through on this agenda, but I hope that covers matters for everyone.
It does. Thank you, Damien. Actually, we have had quite a number of conversations about some of these particular schemes and projects. There's some very, very good news in here today. So, Paul Wood,
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd say how pleased I am that we are progressing with our social building programme for social housing and our building development for affordable housing. And this is welcome news that the next stage of Newsteads is going ahead. I mean, Sheffield is leading the country really with social house building now. We have a better plan than any other authority outside of London for this, and so this is very welcome news and another further step forward towards hitting our target of providing 3,500 social houses over the next few years. So I really welcome this news. I think it's something the city should be very proud of. Thank you.
Yes, we are, Paul, and thank you to you and your officers for bringing them forward. Mazza?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, welcome them comments, Damien. I was at Lears Yard on Monday with the contractor. Demonstrates our commitment to heritage. And we've had some interesting, Chair, we've had some interesting expressions of interest, not just for Lears Yard, but the Cambridge Street Collective and Bethel Chapel. So the momentum is with us. So again, fantastic news for the Heart of the City 2 scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and yet again, thank you to you, Mazza, and your officers for bringing them forward. Mary?
I just want to single out the two projects in parks, Richmond Park and Ecclesfield Park. There's public health investment going into Ecclesfield Park, and we have also put in the recent past, public health investment into Richmond Park. And as I said during the item on SCT, you know, the fact that the health of the city, particularly these times, and the problems with COVID and who is more vulnerable to it. The fact that we've been able to do these developments in our park and make them accessible and good places to go for people is really, really important. I'd also like to thank the Friends Group, and you know, with the last item, sometimes we can be challenging, and our Friends Groups and challenges, but without them, you know, our parks would suffer. They do a massive amount of work in our parks, and I know the Friends Group at Richmond and Ecclesfield Park particularly work hard for their parks, and so I'd take this opportunity to thank them. But I'm really pleased that we can carry on with these developments despite these very, very difficult times that we're in at the moment.
Thank you, Mary. I just want to add to that, because on the list of approvals, you can get anything from, you know, £11,000 for a feasibility study to £18 million worth of investment in housing. But just to say, every single one of them are equally valid and valuable to this city. So regardless of the amounts, because some are, as I say, quite large and some small, as you can see from members' comments, they are absolutely equally valued. Parks, special needs schools, housing, etc. And I'm really pleased to see that we, despite the financial situations we found ourselves in over the many, many years, we're still investing in our city and in our people. So thank you, Damien, to you and your officers and the Cabinet members for bringing all of those forward. So can we agree those approvals? Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11, European Social Fund sector routeways.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Strawn. I'm the Head of Lifelong Learning, and at present I'm also the Acting Head of Employment and Skills. The purpose of the report we've brought is to seek approval to progress to Cabinet the acceptance of £3,263,392 of European Social Fund money following the Council's successful bid under ESF Priority 1.4. This amount of money consists of a direct grant from the European Social Fund of 1.957 million, and a match from Sheffield City Council and Barnsley Metropolitan Borough Council of £1.305 million. The proposal is that we develop a sector-specific intervention aimed at the most disadvantaged groups within the labour market in the city, and to act as a gateway to employment for those people. This is an extension of some current European social funding projects under the Pathways scheme that we've been running for the last 18 months or so. This project encompasses a less broad approach to employment and instead focuses upon a number of key sectors and key skills and key demographics, led by Barnsley and Sheffield LAs, with our own local authority, Sheffield, acting as the lead authority on this. This will be supported by a network of third sector organisations to support community recruitment, participation and progress. The interventions will focus specifically on the following key sectors: the digital sector, construction, engineering, manufacturing, care, and the fibre installation sector. All of them we're acting and recruiting people, and we need to ensure that our citizens are equipped with the necessary skills to engage in those employment opportunities. The recommendations from this are that the Cabinet accept the European Social Fund money, and that we move on and we deliver the sector route-ways funding and the project linked in to that particular source of money.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It would appear, I'm sorry, I've jumped an item, so I've moved on to the next report, so we will go back to it. So I do apologise to you all. Right, have we any questions for Kevin? But thank you very much. Abtisam and then George.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I just want to say that this piece of work evolved from the building block project. I went out to visit this in Manor when it was initially starting, and it was an excellent project working with young people. And it brought together the private sector, so the private developing sector, and the voluntary sector, working together really, really well to develop the skills of young people. And it's really good now that we can replicate this in care, engineering, manufacturing, and other areas that Kevin has mentioned, in areas that we think now will be high need as a result of the pandemic and everything that we're going through. The voluntary sector have worked really well in recruiting from local communities, making sure that we get the hardest to reach of young people, and making sure that we give them the right pathways into employment. So I think this is an excellent example of private sector working together with the local authority and the voluntary sector combined. Thank you, Chair.
Well said, Abtisam. Echo everything you've said. George.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, well done to everyone on the team. It sounds like a really, really valuable project. Can I just ask, obviously, after the UK voted to leave the European Union, the government said that any funds such as this would be replaced. Can I just ask, as an officer involved in these things, have you received a notification about about how this fund will be replaced from the government in future? Because clearly, once this city needs further funding of this type in the future. Thank you.
I think it's part of the Shared Prosperity Fund that we're all waiting with bated breath, aren't we, Kevin, and everyone else, to find out if they'll keep at least one promise, because they seem to break every other. Kevin,
yes,
over to you.
Yeah, we're asking lots of questions about that, but we're getting absolutely nothing back at this point, Chair. So the very simple and precise answer is no, we don't know anything yet. But we certainly need this money. This needs to continue to be a source. These projects are such a critical element of the work that we do to ensure that citizens have employment, that we must have a replacement fund, without a doubt.
Definitely. Maz?
Thank you, Chair. Kevin, thank you for the report. And I just want to echo what Councillor Abtisam Mohammed said. It's really good to see that we're listening to the business community as well, because the sectors you mentioned clearly demonstrate the economy around digital, construction and so forth. So really, really welcome this. And it also aligns with the work we're doing with the Sheffield City region. So really welcome this. And the bit that you've said around tackling, the inequalities, we know that it's getting very, very difficult out there. Employers aren't advertising the vacancies that they used to, but we are still seeing some opportunities out there. And here, getting Sheffield folk ready for these skills also tells businesses out there that are thinking of investing in Sheffield that, we have that skills base. So please come to Sheffield. So welcome this, and keep the pressure on. We'll keep the pressure on the government regarding the Prosperity Fund, because it's not just about this year, it's about future years as well, because there will be young people that will be looking at programs like this thinking, yes, hopefully I'll get an opportunity to go on one of these training courses. So well done to you and your team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I also want to thank Abtisam as well. I think also the comment that you made about visiting projects, I think is very much welcomed. I know certainly by those projects, but also it does give you a better and closer insight into the benefits that people are seeing from something like this, which makes it all the more live and visual, and see how critical actually it is for some of the most vulnerable, disadvantaged citizens, I would say. And thanks also to Kevin and the team that not just on this project, but are constantly working in this environment to make sure that every young person and every person through lifelong learning especially reaches their potential and gets as many opportunities as we can possibly give them, and especially at this current time. So thank you to you all. Right, the recommendations is to accept the fund, approve the project, grant delegated authority to the executive director and relevant cabinet members, and act as the accountable body and make the grant payments. So could we approve those, please? Thank you. Right, back to item 10. I do apologise. Commissioning new care and supported services for people with complex needs.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Hello, folks. It's Sam Martin, Head of Commissioning for Vulnerable People here. And I know Zoom has lots of limitations, and one of the advantages was that as I was getting all excited to start my item then, and the Chair moved on, I was able to privately message using the chat facility to say, oh, you've missed me out. Can I go on next? So maybe Zoom's good for something. Folks, I'm here to present the report around supported living services for people with complex needs. So what this report is in summary setting out is a proposal to recommission some provision, which is supported living provision for the small but a growing cohort of people that we have in the city who have very complex and challenging needs in relation to a whole host of complicated issues like substance misuse, mental health, involved in crime and antisocial behaviour, and very often end up homeless or rough sleeping. And the combination of those needs makes them very difficult to look after and support, and makes both their lives miserable and often the lives of the people around them quite miserable as well. The reason we're trying to do this now, given that we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic, is that we've had historically some services that we've commissioned through the People portfolio that their contracts are due to end this winter. And so we're trying to, we need to set up some new services for the future for this cohort of people. But also we want to make sure that we're doing those in a slightly different way. I think what we're proposing in this report is that we look for a different model of provision in terms of this provision, because we've learned a lot of stuff in the last few years about how things like adverse childhood experience can affect people's behaviour and how they approach the world. We know a lot about the kind of therapeutic environments that are better for those kind of people to be living in. We know that they need, in some cases, 24-hour on-site support, both to protect their own needs and supervise them effectively to ensure that they're not being targeted by criminals and gangs and all that kind of stuff. And obviously things like the COVID pandemic have brought home to us the fact that some of the provision we've had historically in the city for these people is not suitable. So a couple of the sort of hostel type provision that we've got at the moment have things like shared facilities which are unsuitable for infection control and haven't made it very easy for those providers to support people while the pandemic's been on. So key to our sort of future thinking about this is buildings that are suitable for people to live in independently and that are fit for the future in terms of potential future waves of pandemics, which I guess we're hoping don't happen, but that we can't be certain of. So the report sets out broadly some of the needs of the sort of cohort of people that we're talking about, and is clear about the kind of principles in terms of new provision that we are after in terms of the therapeutic support, the health input, the care input that we would like to be able to give to this cohort of sort of really challenging people. I'll just pause there because I know you, in terms of timescales, in terms of the agenda, you need to get through it. So I'll pause at that point to take questions from people, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much, Sam. We have obviously discussed the report as a cabinet and read through it. So are there any questions or comments on cabinet? I've got George and then Jackie. George?
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this. I just want to put this in a bit of context. The officers have worked hard to deliver this in very difficult circumstances for commissioning any services of this kind. This I would see as a stepping stone in delivering a longer term strategy of integrated and really preventative support for people with a variety of complex needs. This gets to a step that whilst we do longer term work, including work that will be launched for too long using our social impact bond approach to really put additional resources to really transform people's lives. This makes sure that in that medium term, while that work is undergoing, that many people will have a better and more suitable place to live, and that's then part of that longer term approach where people the real problems in people's lives can be tackled, and we can make sure that the people in this group not only have things that matter most now tackled, but also long term are involved in the employment market of Sheffield and can live successful lives that we'll want to live and can be really big success stories for health and well-being in the city. So thanks to the officers, and I think we'll hear a lot more in the hopefully the next few months and couple of years about the work we're doing in this area to really transform the lives of some of the most vulnerable people in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Jackie?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo what Councillor Linders Hammond has said. I think this is a really positive report, actually, because it identifies the fact that some people need extra support around them and a myriad of support. And so it's working our way to ensure that happens, that as has been said, it means that those people we will help change those people's lives. They'll have the support to live independently eventually, and also then go on and to live productive lives in the community, because we're helping them get through that. And thanks to the providers who've been providing the service at the moment, because it might be that they need to extend it because of COVID and everything, and we know there won't be any, because my question was going to be, there's no break between one contract and another, and I think that's really important that we make sure those people are going to be supported throughout this process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jackie. Paul, did you? Yes, Paul?
Yeah, I really welcome this report, Sam. I see this as one of the things that we benefit from with what we've had with the disaster of COVID. It adds to the issues we already have in homelessness and housing and complex needs cases through my portfolio. I see it crossing over portfolios, and it's another tool in the armory. And the one thing that I think COVID has shown is how we can work together across the cabinet to solve some of these problems. And I see this as a great tool in addition to the funding we've had of £600,000 towards homelessness and rough sleeping from that we've won from the government in the last week or so. So I see this as a very positive step and really welcome the work you've done, and you and George and Jackie with this. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Simon. And just to add to that, Paul's commented on the interdependency between lots of the different services we provide, you know, especially, you know, housing, lifelong learning, access to jobs, access to health services and everything. And I do think supported housing is the glue that knits all that together, because while they're in some support, being in some supported accommodation, then the intention is to get a wraparound service for them to ensure that they then can access any other opportunities for them at the right time they need it, because we know they're not all ready to go into employment, or they're not all ready to go into independent living, certainly. I suppose the only fear I have, and it's something that Jackie mentioned around following this through and seeing the outcomes of these services, is the impact on charities and things, you know, other charitable services, because we know they're struggling right now, and community organisations, VCF. And whilst they're in supported housing, it doesn't mean they don't get support from elsewhere if they're part of other groups that are associated with their personal circumstances. And if them other groups are really struggling, then that whole wraparound service becomes harder to deliver because you've got less options to be able to do it. So I think we need to keep a very close eye on it and make sure that some of the most vulnerable people with the most complex issues in Sheffield don't fall through the net. And I think this is the key to it, you know, that supported living, because you've got that captive audience as well to make sure they're getting the services. So thank you very much for that. And I know for staff it's very stressful, and it's a very emotive area to work in, because some of the circumstances people find themselves in are heartbreaking, and mostly they are through no fault of their own, and it's circumstances. So thank you to the staff to continue to work in very stressful environments, and especially yourself and the cabinet members working with them. And as they've said, it is interdependent on other services, so you can make sure that you can draw in on those. So thank you. Can we agree the approach? We're not actually agreeing any sort of project contracts, but it's the approach as set out in the report, and delegate to the director.
Agreed. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sam. Sorry to keep you. Right. Item 12, just to remind, item 12 and 13, this is where if you wish to refer to any of the indices, please do indicate. Item 12. Tammy.
Hi there, I'm Tammy Whitaker, Head of Regeneration and Property Services. I'll assume most of you have read the report on the coach house, but I'll run through the kind of highlights of the proposal. Essentially, it involves a number of buildings within Hillsborough Park, and the report is for Cabinet acting as trustees of the charity that manages the park. Hillsborough Park is quite a historic park. There are a number of older buildings in there and listed buildings within the park, which have fallen into a degree of disrepair, it's fair to say. We've been looking for solutions for a number of these buildings for some time now, and we received an expression of interest. We've had a very limited interest because of the cost of putting those buildings back into repair. But we received an expression of interest from Age UK, who have pulled together a package of funding of around £1 million to refurbish the coach house and potting shed within Hillsborough Park. Their proposal is to open up the building as a cafe and provide a range of community uses and community spaces within the coach house and the potting shed, and also some activities within the pavilion. The pavilion is currently a building that's used by a number of clubs, but it's really underutilised. And so the intention is that we'll open that up to a wider audience. The space will be used for meeting rooms, consultation rooms, and will be open to all members of the local community and to local residents too, as well as Age UK's client groups. So the proposal is to offer 2 leases to Age UK to enable them to refurbish the building and bring it back into use for the benefit of the wider community.
Thank you, Tammy. Any, Mary?
Sorry, it's just a comment really. I think it's really, really welcome. I was up there a year ago, a bit longer, and the coach house is in really dilapidated condition. And so to get that money from the lottery via Age UK, who worked really hard to do that, I think it's going to be great development, not just for the people who use it, but also for the wider park users as well, and also people and their relatives and carers who have dementia and are looked after by husbands, wives, children. That facility is going to be great and allows them to be there amongst the wider community, and I think that's really a beneficial. And of course, it's just part of the wider developments that are going to happen and are happening within Hillsborough Park. And the ambition is it'll become an active park, and I hope anybody who uses that facility will also take part in all the other facilities that are in that park as well.
Mark?
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, thanks for the report, Tammy. I think this is great news. One of the things that we often forget is that the parks are more about the people that use them and go in there and enjoy the spaces that are provided. And from everything that's included in here, from the all-wheel bike park and everything else, this is about giving more people more opportunity to meet up and engage and benefit from our parks. They're not just nice places to walk through and look at, they're also places to enjoy and own. And this is an amazing development. And as Mary previously commented, this is but another step in making Hillsborough Park a massive centre of activity to encourage people to get out about and be more active and enjoy fresh air, hopefully. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. George?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to the officers for this report, and yeah, thanks once again to Age UK and Steve Chill for all the massive amount of work that's gone into so far. It is an absolutely huge success for Hillsborough. It will be an integral part of the developing park. Hillsborough Park is such a destination. If you don't go there regularly, you should, because there is so much to enjoy and so much to do. And this will not only benefit vulnerable people that need socialization and need that great place, but actually it is for everyone. And Age UK have been really clear throughout this. It is for them, and it is great for them, but it absolutely is for everyone. It will provide an absolute centre for this park, and I know how excited local people are to see it developing and then see it as an asset to the park. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I'm glad you mentioned Steve Chew, because Steve's also a member of our Sheffield COVID Prevention and Management Board as well. So again, is someone that puts in an awful lot of time into the city and also in wider and, you know, beyond his sort of substantive, let's say, substantive work. So I'm glad he got a mention. Thank you for that. And it would be remiss of me not to say I'm really pleased to see that you are supporting and protecting our bowling community in there and enhancing their experience. So when they go bowling, they can nip in the cafe and they can do other things whilst they're there. And they would be very disappointed, my bowling community, if I didn't mention it. So there you go. So thank you very much. Can we, as trustees of Hillsborough Park, can we, as trustees of Hillsborough Park, agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, did you want to say something, Bob? I know we've
Again, Chair, I'd just like to welcome the approach and thank Tammy and Steve for all the hard work they've done in bringing back into use and repurposing what has been a neglected building for a number of decades. And I just think that you've worked really well with the Friends groups, another example of how we can work closely to deliver objectives that both the public and certain specific groups want. I really do think it's a great scheme, and hats off to both you, Tammy, and to Steve Chew. Thanks again.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that.
Sorry, Chair. I know we've agreed that the decision. I'm happy that there was one question. The walled garden that's there is in commemoration of Hillsborough, isn't it? That I noticed that is. I'm just checking. That is going to still be there and be maintained, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this isn't about taking that over or getting rid of that. I just wanted to make sure that was the case, and I was right in that. Good, thank you. Because it's it's a brilliant, if people are coming, and they do come, I know, to visit the wall garden, if there's a cafe nearby and everything, it'd be really good for them. So thanks, Chair.
I thought they were all putting their hands up to join the bowling club, Chair.
I'll be signing them up when I've retired, don't worry. Right, okay, and that's not to say that only retired people play bowls. It's a very up and coming, active, participative sport, and I would recommend it. If it's 21:20, I think you walk about 4 miles, so do it, go for it. Right, and bringing us on to the sort of final main agenda item, COVID-19 test, track and isolate programme funding. I know I've agreed with Greg that this will be a short presentation, Greg and David, because we have got a public session. We've all had opportunities. Cabinet meet twice a week, so we're very well informed and up to date around current circumstances. And we have a public session on Friday where members of the public will get a much longer presentation and opportunity to participate and ask questions. So is it David or Greg that's going to present it? Greg first. Okay, Greg, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. So as Julie said, I'll be quick. Just by way of epidemiology, in where we are as of today, the numbers going up, incidents, 7-day instances in the order of 50 per 100,000. That's going up, doubling about every 7 days. Positivity is about 4%. So of 100 people with symptoms that they think are coronavirus, 4% of them test positive, i.e. 96 of them don't have the illness. That's important, but that is going up. Positivity is going up ever so slightly. Principally in young working age people at the moment, there is zero chance that we can hold that to young working age people as we go into the autumn. There are already signs that the infections are starting to creep back into older working age and some older people, retirement age people. Hospitals are beginning to be busier. The front door of the hospital is a bit busier. Not so much of a worry now in Sheffield, but it is a worry. It's definitely ticking up in other parts of the country. And there have been a number of deaths over recent weeks, very sadly as well, where COVID is mentioned on the death certificate after a long period where there were no deaths. Future scenarios. You've heard the Chief Medical and Chief Scientific Officer on the TV a few days ago. They made clear there is no doubt we're in for a very, very difficult winter. I would say the same. I have no doubt about that. They said so with far more alacrity than I ever could. But essentially, the story that was set out there is the story locally. I'm of the view our fundamental strategy is still intact. To remind you all, the fundamental strategy is to keep people safe, to protect those who are vulnerable, to reopen Sheffield and to follow government advice. The thing that we're trying to do is to protect people from what is a dangerous respiratory virus that's very easy to transmit, that has 1% mortality. That's not trivial. Equally, we're trying to avoid the economic and social harm that come from the interventions that try and protect people from that dangerous respiratory virus. It's a somewhat difficult balancing act. numbers are going up. We are intensifying our efforts and our interventions across all of the areas of our already published strategy and operational outbreak plan, from contact tracing through to the work that various teams do on prevention, through to the work that's done on cost, to the work that's done on protecting the vulnerable and shielding program. We're focusing very, very much on household transmission. The evidence is that's where most of the risk is, that's where most of the transmission is. So we're focusing our efforts there accordingly. It's a citywide phenomenon. Admittedly, still numbers relatively low, but it is a citywide thing now. It's not just isolated to some parts of town. Hot issues. Schools are very hot at the moment. Many of you will have that direct evidence in your inboxes. Care homes, very worryingly, will become hot in the not too distant future. There have been 1 or 2 outbreaks in care homes, and there are a number of care homes with individual cases that will become a big problem. Testing and the accessibility of testing is red hot in my inbox. It may well be hot in some of your inboxes. It is not of my control. I wish it was of my control, but it is not of my control. We are managing the under capacity of the testing system as best we can. Key worries for me for the future, the impact of school opening, university opening. We cannot not do that. We have to do that. But that will cause pressure on our naught, as Chris Whitty has reminded us on a regular occasion. So that's a worry. Messaging and intervention fatigue. We all want it to be over. I certainly want it to be over. We will all have to stick with the programme for some considerable time to come. I think there is some fraying of the consent to comply with. We can't enforce our way, or only enforce our way out of this. We will enforce where necessary, but actually these things work by consent. So we probably need to rebuild the consent and simplify the rules. And lastly, winter is of deep concern to me, and I've said enough on that. Onto the paper itself. Hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory. I think we'll take it as read. So the purpose was to give an update on the position, and the position as is in the paper is actually out of date because we wrote it a week and a half ago and it's out of date. These things change quickly. So I've given you the up-to-date position, and I shall do so in much more detail on Friday for those of you that can bear to listen to me again. Secondly, to bring the public health response to COVID all into one place and to bring it completely up to date. And that stands, that the fundamentals are there. To ensure that all are cited on the budget. There is a budget, so it's the Department of Health and Social Care contained grant, and for Sheffield it's £3.1 million. So we've set out what broadly in the spending plan against that budget, and we're seeking approval and delegations to continue, and there are 10 recommendations. I'm sorry, I won't dwell on them all in total. Lastly, before I shut up, this has been a huge effort across all sectors of the city, way beyond the council. It's a whole city effort, and congratulations to all who've got us this far. The things that in the paper, just to draw attention to briefly, I shall take it as read, but section 4 outlines what's in the programme, what's in the black box, what are the different bits of the response. Section 5 sets out the arrangements for managing the programme. So the leader of the council chairs the Coronavirus Prevention and Management Board, which brings together all of the stakeholders in the city and gets a consensus on how we want to manage this. There is a strategy programme board, which Eugene Walker is the programme manager, and I'm the responsible officer. That ensures the delivery of the things that we've said that we will deliver, and some of the detail is in section 5, and the detail on the mechanics of how we do some of this is largely in section 5. Section 6 covers the decision-making processes and protocols, and we are treating this as our public health emergency. I hope it's the worst public health emergency I ever have to deal with in my career. But we are treating it as a public health emergency, and we're acting under the Civil Contingencies Act. And I suspect we'll be in this acute response phase for at least until the end of winter. I don't know beyond that. And section 7 and 8 are basically the details of the budget and the funding that's available to us. My one caveat is the Department of Health and Social Care haven't clarified what happens at the end of the financial year. So these things are changing quickly, and we'll endeavour to keep Cabinet as up to date as we can. But what we know today is we don't know what happens at the end of the financial year. So, Chair, that's a summary of the position, a summary of the content of the paper, and the broad sweep of the 10 recommendations.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. As I say, that Cabinet, as well as you've seen in the paper, the governance arrangements that are more structured, in a sense, that are more formal. There's many other conversations and regular meetings that are going on between the council and the police. In fact, myself was having conversations with them only yesterday, but also the Cabinet, individual Cabinet members with their respective teams, executive directors and directors. And also as a Cabinet, we do have a weekly meeting with the executive management team. And as a Cabinet, we also have a informal Cabinet meeting. So I just want to thank officers for keeping us absolutely well informed virtually on, for myself, a hourly basis, in fact, sometimes minute by minute, but also keeping Cabinet collectively very well informed and consulted, and where we need to make decisions, we get all the advice and guidance and evidence that we need to enable us to do that. So thank you to you all for that. Jackie has indicated. Jackie.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just think that thank Greg, and like you said, thank Greg and David for the paper, and Eugene, and for all the team that has been working on this, both in the council and beyond. And I think just thinking about the comms and communications going forward, and the point that Greg mentioned, I do think with the everyday different things coming out, I think there is still a bit of confusion out there about what the message is and what the what we're allowed and not allowed to do. And there's also some I suppose some confusing messages, and people, and for me it's, if we want to get people to buy into this, and that's what we want to do, and it was clear from Professor Chris Whitty when he was saying, look, it's our own responsibility, but it's not just about you, it's about, we're responsible for everybody, it's everybody needs to look at it. I think it is when you can go to a pub and meet more people, but you can't meet members of your family. And I know, Greg, you say that it's in families that we're seeing it more. I just think people think, well, why is it that I can't meet my family, but I can go to a pub and meet more than six, see more than, and I think there's something about our comms messages that need to be extremely clear, and to make it fair for people as well. Otherwise we will get people who won't buy into it. That's my worry and concern. Sorry, I just think it's really important, but it's really important we do, as Julie would say, I'm sure, sorry, the leader would say, wash your hands. I saw a really, really good advert yesterday. Was it yesterday? Peppa Pig's got a song as well now, so we can all sing the Peppa Pig washing hands song, right? So it's brilliant. But anyway, wash your hands, stay 2 meters apart, stay at home if you have the symptoms, and stay isolated if you need to. Those are the messages we need to get out that are simple, but then there's all these other nuances, isn't there? So I just think it's really important, the comms. So I'm pleased we've got something going here, and we need to get beyond the usual areas that we get our comms out to make sure we're getting to those younger people as well as all the older people. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that, Jackie. And as you know, as a member of the what is sort of nationally known as the Outbreak Control Board, which we call the Sheffield COVID-19 Prevention and Management Board, because that's what it's about. It's about preventing outbreaks, preventing transmission, spreading, and then when it is and it's increasing, then responding to that. So it's it's managing it. And as Greg has explained, that board consists of myself as the chair, yourself, cabinet member for public health, amongst other things, but also all sectors actually of the community are present on that board, public, private and VCF sector. And it's our responsibility to make sure the messaging is right and the comms is right. And we had, in fact, we only the other day had a long conversation about comms. So the comments that you made were made at the board the other day. And as I say, on Friday, we've got a session where we'll hear feedback from members of the public to hear how they're sort of their perception and how they're responding to it. And that's really helpful, because then that helps us nuance the messaging and getting it out. So it's like a constant thing. And I know the officers are, you know, frantically, overwhelmingly on top of all this. As I say, it's a minute by minute, day by day thing. So we will all work together to ensure that collectively the city protects everyone in the city. So Mary?
Yeah, I think Andrew covered it when we had the SCT report, but just about, has the government said anything about elite sports? I thought I heard something about elite sports in particular, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. In short, there was proposals to start getting elite sport back with spectators, which government have rolled back on. They pushed back any idea of starting sport with spectators. Probably, my guess is for 6 months at least.
Yeah. Charlie, did you wish to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I just wanted to say two things really. One is to absolutely echo the thanks that cabinet members have made to what I'm going to call Team Sheffield. That's not just the people in the organisation that I'm responsible for as the interim chief executive, but everyone across the city who's pulled together. This wasn't quite what I was expecting when I joined you in January, to say the least. And I have to say that I couldn't have wished to be in a better and more committed team. And the second thing I want to say is a big thank you to you, Julie, and to all the cabinet members, because in my career I've worked in lots of different councils, and I know how difficult it's been for you as members in an emergency situation where the Civil Contingencies Act, which Greg mentioned, rather shifts the responsibility from the members to the officers, and it's been really helpful having both, you know, your support on the one hand, but also your forbearance and space for us to get on and do the job. So I just wanted to put on record my my thanks to the team, but also specifically to the cabinet members who are part of that team, who've been very supportive indeed.
Thank you. It's much appreciated, that message, Charlie, I'm sure by cabinet members. I know, again, we've been working very closely with officers throughout and will continue to do so collectively. And because David's here, I also want to thank David. We don't often get opportunities to face-to-face thank our officers. So thank you to David for all the work you put in, not just for this particular report. On the recommendations, I'm not going to read them all out. As Greg has said, there's 10, did you say, Greg? I know they're lettered, so I can't quite work out between A and I how many there are, A, B, C, D, F. But anyway, I'll take your word for it. But there's just one recommendation I do just want to read out, because I think that's critical. It's all been said, but it's the first one, which recognises the hard work and the achievements of council employees, partner organisations and the VCFS in preventing, mitigating and managing COVID-19 today, and the enormous effort that began in March and is ongoing. And I don't think we can say that often enough. We'll just keep saying it, because it's heartfelt and it's so much appreciated, all the work everyone puts in. So we'll continue to do that. So can we agree those recommendations, Cabinet?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Right, thank you very much. I'm sorry it's been a long meeting, but I think it's very much worthwhile. because there've been some very important issues on. So that does conclude the meeting. But just before we go, just to say, there is the Prevention and Management Board public session on Friday at 2 o'clock. So if anyone listening wishes to tune in, Greg will be doing an update, and then the whole board will be participating and answering questions in conversation for 1.5 hours. And that's at 2 o'clock on Friday. So we welcome you to that if you come along, and I want to wish you all the very best to continue to keep safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.